Hey, everyone. Welcome to Locked On Lakers for Friday. Brian Kamenetsky and Andy Kamenetsky. To trade now or to trade later? That is the question for Rob Pelinka, and one we'll talk about next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, sometimes on weekends, no matter how or where you get your podcasts, always free, never behind a paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to see the show and participate with the still fast growing community of people who are there every day, leaving comments, talking to us, talking to each other, who are all visibly frustrated by Wednesday night's loss and are hoping for something better. A big upset, Andy, as the Lakers take on the Grizzlies tonight at the Crypt. I do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. If you happen to see one for general manager of the Lakers, don't think that would upset a lot of people. We'll get to this question of Rob Pelinka and whether or not he is going to be trading now, trading later, what the options are, what league experts think is going to happen. We'll get to that throughout the course of the show, but do want to give you guys a couple updates on things that happened from Thursday's practice. There is video, Andy, circulating, actual video evidence of Anthony Davis taking shots on the court.
Davis's shot was wet, man, from outside. They were all dropping.
What this is a side note. I'm not saying every NBA player can do this in games because obviously many of them can't. Pretty much it is if you just sit and watch guys like in shoot arounds or at practices or whatever, just stand there and take 3-pointers. They never miss. Or 18-foot jump shots. Like they never ever miss.
This is how I knew that Lonzo's first couple years with the Lakers, that his shot form was just jacked to all hell, because you and I used to do pre and post game radio for the Lakers for 710 ESPN, their radio affiliate. So doing the pregame show, which for home games was inside Staples Center, then Staples, now the Crypt, we would be there often doing these shows while players were warming up.
Mm-hmm.
And I would see Lonzo go through his routine, and not only was he missing a startling amount of unguarded threes, his form on every three was completely different. His arms and especially his legs were all over the place, never the same way. Yeah, I mean, it was like one of those
like a car dealership win.
Yeah, he was like a car dealership inflatable dealie.
To his credit, his 3-point percentage has gone from 30% as a rookie, 33, 37, 38, 42.5. Like that is really impressive improvement.
That's why I said in the beginning, I said
right, good for him.
Seasons he was with the Lakers. No, I mean, Lonzo, when he's healthy,
he's a good player.
He's a good player. He's also a really fun player.
Mm-hmm.
He's a fun player to watch, but he's just never healthy.
Anyway, back to the Lakers here. Anthony Davis on the floor. Darvin Ham said he looked really, were there 3 reallys, I believe? Really, really, really well. He is progressing. Went through it went through parts, I should say, of non-contact practice. So not all the stuff that he did in non-contact, but parts of that non-contact practice, including pick and roll drills and offensive scripting and all that kind of stuff, which is good, I guess, Andy, but doesn't necessarily let you have any idea that he might be getting back to the court quickly.
No, the way I look at this stuff is because the details in terms of ETA and the return, they're going to be vague because to some degree you are figuring this out very cautiously as you go, and also because the Lakers treat this stuff like the nuclear secrets.
Well, you don't, and in fairness, you do not want to set a date because the date might have to change, and that freaks people out.
Sure, but they also are extremely cagey about this stuff. There are other teams around the league less cagey with this information. Yes, you would agree?
I would agree.
I just judge this in terms of it doesn't seem to be making anything worse. That's the sign of progress. Like, he feels fine. He's not feeling more pain as the result of a workout. That's what I'm watching for, is just next day we don't hear anything about a setback.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think there is the best chance for something is like, and I'm not saying this is likely to happen, but like some sort of surprise where it's like just kind of out of the blue, the Lakers announced that Anthony Davis is, questionable for tonight's game and is a game time decision. Like I feel like that is more likely. Not that it is likely, but like that is a possible scenario here if you want to be kind of optimistic about these things. The other bit of news that came out of practice, sure to infuriate everyone, is that the NBA's 2-minute report indeed confirmed that Kendrick Nunn was fouled on that late 3-pointer in Wednesday night's game by De'Aaron Fox of Sacramento, and on a play that would have sent him to the line with a chance to tie the game. So the Lakers once again got screwed.
Yeah, I
The
mean,
league hates the Lakers, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, they've traditionally never wanted them to succeed, never
Nope.
wanted them to provide visibility for the league. They'd contract the Lakers if they could. Yeah, it's funny actually. Both of us thought in real time that it wasn't a foul. We both thought it was close.
You were a little more sure that it wasn't. I thought he might have gotten him with his body. I could totally understand why. And I forget the name of the official who was there. But I totally understand why she didn't call it and would have seen it from her angle differently. But I'm also not terribly surprised the league said, no, it was a foul.
It's just, there have been a lot of these with the Lakers of late in games that were close. And, not that these other teams don't want to win either, but the Lakers really need these wins. Like, I think these have all come against teams that frankly did not need the win as bad as the Lakers.
No, because these are not need-based calls. I mean,
not to make it all about us, but
Sacramento's 25-18. They didn't need that.
No.
So Kendrick Nunn is an 80-something percent, 87, 88% career free throw shooter. I am going to 87.5 for his career. I'm going to assume that he made it. And I'm going to go ahead and call that a win for the Lakers. So the Lakers, to me, Andy, after like 5 of these, I'm giving them a win. They enter tonight's game against Memphis at 21-24. So
it's like what Stu Gatz does with his personal record book on the damn
Retard
show. Like
the Lakers
personal record book, Kevin Durant has yet to win a championship.
The league says they're 20-25, and this might become relevant for tiebreaker purposes. But the Brian Kamenetsky standings have the Lakers at 21-24.
This will be really interesting too. Like, if the Lakers end up missing the play-in by 1 game or even just percentage points or a tiebreaker, we can then put them in the play-in and then determine from there what happened and like how far the Lakers.
We can get them all the way to the title.
Yeah.
And we'll probably need to take at least a week's worth of shows to do it. Real quick before we break, what do you think about this 2-minute report? I find it insane that the NBA does it in certain ways, but I also kind of respect it because it is, all they're doing is opening themselves up to punishment.
It's similar to how I feel about replay, which, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, particularly as social media was really starting to take off, I was a big proponent of needing to use more instant replay, needing to go to the booth more, because it felt untenable and impractical, in a lot of ways unfair to these officials to be in a situation where they did not have as much information in front of them as someone sitting on their couch with the ability to rewind plays, slow things down in real time. And then all of a sudden everything ends up on social, going viral. And it felt to me like you're putting these officials in a really bad position. But again, kind of like replay now, which has just come to a place where it slows games to an aesthetic crawl. And now I'm like, you know what? I can live with some missed calls. I can live with it being wrong. The spirit of the 2-minute rule is great, but I think it's now serving to piss off fans more than giving them some degree of solace,
right? Because like
because of
there's
transparency.
transparency. Yeah,
You know,
I just we'll break. My basic theory is they should only be allowed to play replays at half speed. If you can't see it at half speed, then frame by frame, like something that's played at half speed is something that maybe a human eye should be able to pick up. And if it can't pick it up there, if you got to go Zapruder film frame by frame to see something to know if it's right or too much, takes too long, move on. Are the Lakers going to make a trade, Andy? And when are they going to make a trade? Experts have weighed in, and that's next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by LinkedIn. As a small business owner or hiring manager, success in 2023 all depends on your team members. And that's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by using their targeting tools to match open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your goals. LinkedIn goes beyond resume data to using insights from your job post, your company, and their 875 million member profiles to land the most qualified candidates. LinkedIn Jobs make it easy to screen and rate applicants all in one platform. And that's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. And it's really important right now to set a tone for your fiscal success with your company. You got to do this now. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Okay, Andy. So it's trade season. People are ready to talk about trades, talk about whether or not trades are coming, and all that stuff. And certainly the Lakers, while they're not right now in the center of a lot of rumors, they are always a team that people look at with the expectation that they'll probably do something just because the pressure is on them so much, to the point that ESPN, for example, has a whole thing on both conferences now, talking about the likelihood of whether or not a trade is going to happen and all that stuff. They got the Lakers, if I'm understanding this correctly, as an 8 out of 10 in terms of like something's going to happen. But what's interesting about this is that the something that they're talking about isn't necessarily a big deal. It's not Russell Westbrook necessarily. A couple of deals that they float include one for Josh Richardson. They send Patrick Beverley there in a second rounder. It could be there are 2 or 3 different ways the Lakers could do it. They float a horrible deal to the where the Lakers get Emmanuel quickly, but give up a first round pick with the Knicks. Like that's terrible. Point being, they're expecting something to happen, but that something isn't necessarily a big thing.
Well, it's also, I thought this was very interesting in the ESPN article, something that neither you or I had ever thought about because it just seems preposterous. The trade market is, I'm reading right now, the trade market is less appealing when you consider that the Lakers project to have around $35 million in cap space, not enough to acquire a player like Zach LaVine or Bradley Beal if they were to become available in trade. They could orchestrate a sign and trade with Russell Westbrook, but that would require a team to commit substantial money to the point guard in his first year. Like the notion of some exceptionally front-loaded sign and trade contract with Russ, I got to be honest, that never crossed my mind because it seems so ridiculous.
Honestly, the only shot of that happening is if Genie fires Pelinka and he gets hired by another team, and the Lakers do a sign and trade with that team. But that seems the only, because nobody else in the league has shown much interest in acquiring Westbrook except for Pelinka over the last, year or two. So,
well, I will say this. If you were to do that, that would explain why they're trying to maybe keep the 2 firsts and their draft day pick, because trading a heavily front-loaded Russell Westbrook in a sign and trade will require all 3 picks.
You're gonna have to give something up for that.
Yes. Again, that scenario never crossed my mind because it just seemed absurd.
No, there's a 0%. Like, look, I mean, sign and trades, and like we're going to talk about a really interesting story that appeared on Hoops Hype in the next segment. But like, maybe we'll get to it a little bit in this one as well. But certainly for the next one, there are a lot of different complications with sign and trades and this and that, whatever, and they are more difficult to line up than I think casual fans at least sometimes understand, because the rules around them are really complex. And if you make a sign and trade, then you're capped out here and you can't do this, and the other team has to be. None of that applies to the idea that anybody would acquire Russell Westbrook in a sign and trade, because the number one thing is that a team must want to sign the player you're trading. And while someone, I think, if Russ, keeps doing what he's doing and agrees to go to another place and carry on in this way, someone will sign him, I think, for sure. He's sort of resurrected his career in that way, but it ain't going to be for $30 million a year, 42, or
just the first season, though. Just that first season.
I don't care if it's a 12-year contract and they're only going to pay him in the first season. Like that's the rest he's just working for free. Nobody's
like when I wanted
doing
the Lakers to lock up Slava to a 20-year, $20 million contract.
Yeah.
I just wanted Slava around for 20 years.
Yeah, I had felt the same about Von Wafer. It could be a 20-year minimum deal. I just want the guy around. How you approach these things, though, is just, it's an interesting thing. Like, just trying to figure out how you value the assets. Like, there's a really big debate, and a lot of people on the YouTube page have had it, and it's an interesting one, just about just how valuable the two picks that the Lakers have really are, given that 2029 is a long way away. The Lakers are not very good right now. I think we can all agree about that. They may not be good next year. They may not be good the year after that. They might not be good the year after that. But by 2029, they could have put Humpty Dumpty back together again here. So it's valuing the first round picks is interesting. And I know you did a poll in terms of like actual humans that they might be able to trade. Like, what's the value of somebody like Max Christie? Is he enough to just keep you from having to give up a pick? I don't know.
It just popped into my head because, the Lakers are a team that, in terms of what they can work with right now, are pretty strapped when it comes to assets. So I put out a poll at Cam Brothers. I'll actually put this up in the YouTube community section as well. So our folks can vote on it if they're not following us on Twitter, or if they just want to vote twice. Has Max Christie played well enough as a rookie to serve as a legit sweetener in a potential deadline deal? Note, I'm not proposing the Lakers actually trade him. I'm just wondering. Like, I was genuinely curious about this. So far in the polling, I mean, there's about 20 hours left that people can. It's almost 77% people saying yes, that they actually think Christie. Yeah, I was thinking about that. I actually think Christie probably has played well enough that he could be.
You got to define value relative in,
sure.
Like, is it going to be enough that, like, you don't have to give up, a first round pick for somebody or something? Can you, extract a really good player based on Max Christie alone? No, but maybe it massages the protections a little bit. Maybe,
exactly.
Stuff like that. The particulars here, Andy, of this idea of whether or not the Lakers make a move now, this season versus the offseason. All of this with predicated on the idea that you are wanting to do something to maximize the ability of the LeBron and AD core. Because obviously tear it down is a whole other question with a whole other set of trades and a whole different option tree. But let's just say for a second, the Lakers are interested in trying to rescue this. They have essentially two paths. They can make a deal at the deadline, or they can make a deal in the summertime. Which one is most advantageous? Interesting feature written about that on Hoopsite. We'll discuss it next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by Built Bar. If you're looking for a really awesome tasting treat, but you don't want all the fat and the calories, go get yourself a Built Bar. We just got through the holidays, and I know I could eat a little healthier after the damage that I did. I'm sure a lot of people are in the same boat, but it's like, you don't want to compromise taste. That's the whole reason you're eating in the first place. And that's why you got to try Built Bars. And with Built Bars, healthy actually tastes great. As always, these are covered in 100% real chocolate. They come in awesome flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, awesome variety. They taste like candy bars, but only 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, but 17 grams of protein. And you want the protein. That's the good stuff. And you don't even have to wait around for a box. Like for years, we've talked about ordering the Built bars at built.com, and still a great option, but you can actually now get them at your local Walmart in the pharmacy section or at a Sam's Club. Go by either spot, pick up a box with different flavors, variety, these spice
No
of life.
prescription necessary, by the way. You
Nope.
go to that pharmacy section, you don't have to hand anybody a piece of paper. You just pick up that box and you go.
They're not in your business. Built.com.
Okay, so the Lakers, this choice of whether or not the Lakers want to make a move now or make one over the summer has been kind of a big giant framing issue of this entire season. Again, with the idea that, if you want to maximize AD and LeBron, can you do a better job of that this summer with, what amounts to between 30 and 35, depending on the estimate in cap space, but you can maybe keep those picks in a way that you wouldn't be able to if you tried to make a trade now. Very interesting article by Yossi Goslin on Hoops Hype. Very smart dude who understands the salary cap very well. He makes, Andy, a very strong case to do something now.
Well, the overriding thought process for Yossi is basically just who you're going to have as options for the Lakers with 30-ish million. That's what the projection is. We won't know for sure, but it's going to be on the low side of 30.
It's not like 55 or 60 million giant. Right. Yeah.
Or that people are wondering, okay, it might be 30, but it could end up closer to 40. Everybody's agreeing. They don't know the exact number, but it's likely going to be on the lower side of 30. That is not going to get you a max player for sure. Like unless it's Kyrie on a discount, and debate all. We've done it before. We'll do it again. I'm sure you can debate all the pros and cons on a long-term commitment to Kyrie Irving. Who knows if that's even as big a possibility now, given the way that Brooklyn is playing and he and the franchise seem to have made nice. Who knows? But from there, you're talking about the class of guys like James Harden, Chris Middleton, Draymond, I guess, if you still consider him part of that, they're not likely going to be available for that money. Guys like the next tier down, Kuzma, Miles Turner, Vucevic, Jeremy Grant, were he available? I doubt it. But, Gary Trent, you can get them for 30 mil, but they're going to be taking up an awful lot of that space. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to be able to use it for much more. There are, some wings that are slightly below that, like your Josh Harts and Dante DiVincenzo's, Karis LeVert's of the world. I took a look also at some impending free agents who make less than 30, will likely continue to. Dylan Brooks currently makes 12 mil, and that's certainly going to go up. Josh Richardson, we talked about him. It's around 12. I could see it going down. Kelly Oubre, Rui Hachimura, Malik Beasley, if Utah declines his option. D'Angelo Russell, which feels unlikely, but he certainly is not going to be making another 30 mil a year on a new contract.
No, but he's not going to be making 8 either.
No, sure. But I'm just saying he could be in that price range. Your boy, Will Barton, Brian, who is probably going to be costing less than his current 15 mil.
I would think so.
But that is likely the group of people that you are looking at. And maybe you can get a couple of those guys. But when you weigh it against the idea of who you could potentially get with $47 million to work with, i.e. Russ's contract.
Actually, more than that, because you're able to push that, 20% or 15, whatever the number is, higher. So they could get up to, it's about 55 or almost $60 million in salary that you can bring back if you can find a taker for Westbrook.
Right. That your options in terms of quality of players would actually increase more, and you will know exactly who you're getting because you traded for them, as opposed to trying to play the free agent game, like a stock market.
Can I add one thing to that though?
Sure.
It's not necessarily the quality of players either that, and he points this out, and I think it's something that we've talked about a lot too. It's volume. Mm-hmm. It's that you can acquire 3 or 4 players perhaps for that amount of money, where you might only be able to get 1 or 2. And then you go into the offseason, you have your exceptions, you can fill out the other way, and so on and so on. But the ability to maximize the amount of money that you can use on players is critical here, because the Lakers have spent a couple seasons now building essentially with minimum contracts. What I think is really fascinating about this is, in a perfect world, you could trade Westbrook, even if it meant including the 2 first-round picks for 3 or 4 really good players. You kind of built up your team for next year and all that stuff. There is a version of that trade, though, Andy, where you're not necessarily trading for human beings. You're trading for numbers. You're trading for a 12 million, a 10 million, a 10 million, an 8 million, and a whatever. Like you're trading for contract sizes of players that are on longer term deals that the other team doesn't want, and you take back as many of those. Perhaps, ideally, maybe the only way you would do this is with sweetener. You'll take our guys off our hands. Here's a first round pick. You take these 2 guys. Here's 2 second-round picks. Here's another first-round pick for that guy or whatever. Now, these are not appealing players. They might be the Evan Fourniers of the world. Yeah. But now you can turn around and trade those guys, and you have extra picks to then attach to trade them, and you can sort of red paper clip your way to something better, because it's easier to trade 3 guys who make $12 million than it is 1 guy who makes 36.
Yeah. There is a logic to that. I would be extremely hesitant to be taking on several players that you're not wild about as much as players as you are numbers, because if you can't move them, then you're not doing anything to really maximize the whole LeBron AD thing, which was the reason you're doing this in the first place. Like, the Evan Fournier and, other gents,
whoever it might be. Yeah.
I don't like those deals.
Do you think Rob Pelinka is a talented enough GM to be able to pull off that sequence of moves to actually have that turn out to be good? I don't.
He may or may not be, but the truth is, I'm not sure. I don't know how many GMs are talented enough around the league to be playing that type of 3 or 4 moves ahead, all condensed into one season. Like, that's a lot to ask of any GM, regardless of what you think of Rob Pelinka and the Ramby and everybody else in the room for the Lakers. That's actually a pretty big ask, period.
Yeah.
So I'm not big in favor of the idea of breaking up Russ into players that you're not wild about just for theoretical flexibility. I would want players that I would be at least somewhat confident about if they ended up on my roster next year. Would they actually help? But what I would say, though, is I think their best path forward is to be trying to create next year's team now. Because if it happens to be a good team for next year, it might be good for them this year, and hopefully they get into play-in and see where they can go from there. But
right,
if nothing,
good player, if you acquire good players that will be on next year's team, they're good players now too.
Right, exactly. But if nothing else, you just start building some continuity that has been so shockingly lacking with this franchise the last few years. What I also think is interesting about that too, though, is I think the most common school of thought with Russ is that if, say, the Lakers look more and more for what variety of reasons that they're not going to make the play-in, that you hang on to Russ, you let that expire, you keep your firsts, which isn't entirely illogical, but I think you can make just as strong, if not a stronger argument as that's where you start looking to aggressively trade Russ. Because at that point, there's no continuity to worry about for this season. If you encounter some hiccups implementing the new guys, who cares? It looks like you're out anyway. Like, I actually think the further you start feeling like you are from the playoffs, you can actually make a better argument, a more urgent argument for moving Russ now.
Yeah. And I think the other thing to remember,
certainly doesn't hurt anything at the very least.
For the thought exercise that we're working with here, you have to assume, it's all predicated on the idea that there is a trade available for Westbrook. And I just don't think there is. And certainly there isn't now. And I don't think one is necessarily going to develop. I could be wrong in some ways. I hope I'm wrong. But that's the other thing. The other thing that I think gets in the way here, and sorry, excuse me. And maybe we'll have a little more chance to go into this deeper on Monday, is the question of money. is one that is central to this conversation. Fans, broadly, the Lakers have a greater ability to reset their luxury tax clock, their repeater tax clock, if they go into the offseason with cap space. If they make trades now that add to their payroll for next year, they're almost certainly guaranteed to be a luxury tax team, and that costs them a ton of money once you start getting the repeater taxes and things like that. There are many people who believe that the Lakers, their hesitation to move Russ for players that can help them now is based on the money question, and how much money it would cost them next season, the season following, more than it is a basketball question. I happen to think, again, the market is not there anymore. But the money question is a huge one. And from a Lakers fan perspective, it's not going to be, I don't care how you lay out the books, talk about how much money it is and this and that, whatever, that is almost universally going to be seen by Lakers fans as a you problem, not a me problem.
Well, I mean, before we go, it just gets to my overarching worry that I've talked about a lot of times when it comes to their view on team building and money. It's not that they're unwilling to spend altogether. I just don't think that they will commit long-term money to anybody they don't see as a star. And that is a very constricting, even paralyzing way to go about building a team. You miss out
especially
on a lot of opportunity.
And if your idea is you're going to sign some decent players in free agency next year, but they're probably not going to be stars, you have to be willing to give them longer contracts. If they're not willing to do that, what are we doing here?
I mean, there's only so many times you can repeat the KCP 1 year balloon payment of like $18-19 million, whatever it was, but they eventually ended up giving him a long-term deal anyway, which was the right thing to do, helped lead to a championship.
Yep. Locked on Lakers on YouTube is where you can go see the show. We will see what happens with the Lakers against a very good and extremely entertaining Memphis team Friday night at the Crypt. Then a Sunday, I believe it is, up in Portland. Then a couple of home games, and then that really brutal road trip begins. So some very difficult games ahead for the Lakers. If you could steal one against Memphis, that would go a long way to undoing the damage of the NBA stealing a win from the Lakers, who are 21-24. Don't believe what the standings say. We'll see everybody next time.